Hello again. Just thought it'd be a fun idea to sit down and take a look at all the Cave Company games that were released throughout the years. So, Cave had a great run there. In my opinion, the best of the shmups genre. Also, in my opinion, one of the best game developers in general of all time, if you ask me. But, what makes Cave games so good? The simplest explanation is that their games just have a ton of polish. Much like you can tell a Nintendo game by the level of polish it has, and the game's just being fun to play. So, everything down to the movement, mechanics, bullet patterns, the game balance is fine tuned. And that's not even to mention the stellar graphics that still hold up to this day, the incredible music, and just overall presentation. So I've had a pretty long history of playing these games, all the way back to 2006 when I first discovered Dodonpachi, and yeah, I've been a huge fan ever since, and I've tried to get my hands on these games to play, any way possible. The one thing I will note is I haven't been able to give all these games the time and attention they deserve. As you know, with Cave titles, you can pour so many hours into them and still only scratch the surface. So there's a bunch of games I would love to play more of, but the reality is you only have so much time, and so far I've only been able to dedicate that time to my favorites. So if your favorite is near the bottom of this list, it's probably because I haven't been able to play it enough to really understand it. So I'm going to go through these games in chronological order, and starting off in 1995 with Dodonpachi. So what to say about Dodonpachi? So it's Cave's first game, and it set the stage for what to come. From what I understand, Cave was formed by former Toplan employees, so this game is a little similar to those older Toplan games. Maybe not as crazy as something like Batsugun, with how many bullets just fill the entire screen in that game. But yeah, this game sets the foundation. It honestly does a lot of things right, and I can't knock it too much for being the first game, and when it released. But the thing is, Cave just went on to do bigger and better things after this. So I would put Dodonpachi in the D tier. And speaking of better, the sequel and next game, Dodonpachi, does indeed do everything better. It is the classic, the stone cold classic of the genre. And it's the game that got me into shmups. This is where Cave really solidified the formula that all the games really borrow from, and to be honest, Cave only were able to slightly improve on this original formula throughout the years. It more or less created a second golden era of shmups. First with the more old school style, and then Dodonpachi issuing in, the Danmaku bullet hell era. I look at it in terms of, instead of BC and AD, it's now BD and AD, so before Dodonpachi and after Dodonpachi. And so many games have honored the style still 25 years later. It's such an iconic game, and it still holds up to this day for sure. So that is why I am going to put Dodonpachi in the S tier. ESPGaluda, so this came out the year after Dodonpachi. You could say it's the start of the ESP series, but it lacks any kind of the slowdown system that the Galuda games had. This is the first game with human characters flying around instead of ships, and Joker June did the art, who is my favorite Cave artist. And yeah, all the characters are really cool, has that real world setting to it, and the game's graphics really stand out as well as being fairly detailed. I think Cave really mastered the graphics of those later games on the 6800 arcade hardware. The scoring is alright. I find it a little hard to control, but you can decide the stage order in this game. That helps you out a bit. And like all the ESP games, the final boss is very hard, but getting there isn't super difficult. It's a cool game though, and I think it solidly fits in the B tier. Next up is Dangun Feveron. The last few times I've booted this game up, I've really enjoyed it actually. I don't mind the silly disco theme at all. I think it's pretty cool actually. And you can't help but collect the disco men, which makes the scoring kind of fun. Maybe the graphics aren't quite up to ESPGaluda's level, which came out the same year. But the game in general is more of an old school shmup with the fast bullets and the fast movement. Haven't really played this one enough, but I'm gonna put Dangun Feveron in the C tier because I see some potential there. Then we have Guange. This is Kei's first real experiment, and it's got a unique system that takes a bit to get used to. So the main mechanic is controlling your Shikigami, and you slow down bullets while moving your character around at the same time. The stage also scrolls all over the place, left and right. Kind of got some obstacles there too, and enemies are coming up from all different directions. So again, like ESPGaluda, this has characters instead of ships, but this time it has a health bar system. But nothing else plays like it. It's a really cool system when it clicks. Has an awesome Japanese style and setting. A little like Samurai Champloo before that was even a thing. But yeah, I really like this game, and I think it's deserving of the A tier. Progear. This game was published by Capcom, so it might be a little more well known, and you can see the money behind it with the presentation, which is nice. It's the first horizontal game, but for me, I've always preferred vertical shmups over horizontal shmups. I've warmed up to horizontal shmups over the years though, but I have admittedly not spent enough time on this game. It is on my short list of games to come back to though, and part of that is the scoring system, which I've never been able to wrap my head around, but it looks really interesting, and I'd like to figure that out. So this one could change in the future, but I think it fits well right in the B tier, behind ESPGaluda. Dodonpachi DOJ. Now we get into my favorite era of Cave. The next 4 games are absolutely incredible. So we return to Dodonpachi, the icon of the genre, and all the Dodonpachi games are great, right? And Dodonpachi may have done it first, but DOJ honed it into solid steel. Again, takes from the original, tightens it up, just builds upon it for one of the best games of all time. Probably the biggest addition is the hyper system, and it's fun and rewarding. The game has an excellent soundtrack, the graphics still hold up very well. It's probably the darkest and grittiest Dodonpachi, and probably my favorite in that regard. All the stages are really good, especially stage 3 and 4. Has a nice routing to it, and I think stage 5 and the final boss are reasonable. So I think the difficulty balance is fair and bumps up right against to that tipping point of just being too hard. And then you have the 2 different versions, white and black label. I prefer black label, but this is just an all-time classic. And I'm gonna put Dodonpachi DOJ firmly in first place in the S tier. Ketsui. So this is essentially the pinnacle of the genre. It came out right on the heels of Dodonpachi DOJ, and Ketsui is somewhat similar to DOJ, but it just turns everything up to 11. And that comes to the graphics and art style, and the music has a fitting drum and bass that is some of Cave's best. The bullet patterns are innovative, constantly engaging the player throughout all 5 stages, and offering some of Cave's most brutal craftsmanship. The mechanics are top-notch, and it incorporates an all-time favorite with the lock-on shot, which I always love to see. So this game rewards aggressiveness. You need to stay on top of your enemy and know where they're coming from. But really, it's an unforgiving game that can get chaotic easily if you're not paying attention. You really need to be on top of your game to hope to make any dent at all. The ultimate rush to play, and also has the masterful PS4 port, which I think is the best Cave port ever. So no question this is an S tier game, but is it better than DOJ? So I haven't gotten the clear of Ketsui yet. It is next on my goals. So I find it just a little too hard at the moment to put it above DOJ. But if I ever get that clear, I think this will rise to the top. So for now, it's going into the second position. ESPGaluda. After the brutality of DOJ and Ketsui, Cave backed it off a little bit and tried a more accessible approach with the next 2 games. And ESPGaluda accomplished that approachability with a slowdown mechanic. Kinda like what they did with Guwange, but much easier to control with just the push of a button. I think more games should explore a slowdown mechanic. I think it really fits well into the shmup genre. But as an alternative to Mushihimesama simplicity, this game has 4 buttons and a little more complicated with resources you need to manage, but it's still a beginner-friendly game. In fact, for a one-loop game with no difficulty options, it is quite easy to get to the last boss, but that last boss can be a bit of a gatekeeper. Pretty interesting scoring mechanic as well. I always think it's cool when score is tied into the survival aspect. And it has some of Cave's best music. Oh man, stage 2. And has a cool sci-fi fantasy style with it. This is one of those games I played a bunch first starting out. So I think it's really awesome. So I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Mushihimesama. This is a great game in its own right, and it tends to get overshadowed by its sequel. But what makes Mushi so great though is it simplifies everything to just shooting and dodging crazy bullet patterns. No other game quite captures that trance-like, in-the-zone state, and I find it meditative. It makes the game so fun to play. It's the first game also to have 3 different difficulty options, which I find is a welcome addition. And then 1.5 is worth mentioning. It's essentially a black label and is a really cool version. Kind of like Futari's black label. So it's got more bullets, more slowdown, a better shot. And then also 1.5 has a max mode. It's also a new mode in itself. Crazy hard bullets with a 1 auto bomb. So it's a very fun mode. Then you got the great port on Steam. And I'm a big fan of the Mushihimesama games. I think this game is a definite S tier, putting it in 3rd. Ibara. So most of these games I talked about so far were directed by Aikida, and this is the first Yagawa developed game. So sorry to the Yagawa fans out there, but his games never quite clicked with me. So Yagawa came over from Rising, and Ibara can be seen as a spiritual successor to Battle Garega, but with a little bit of that Cave twist. So it's got the metal system, bomb fragments, of course the rank system comes over as well. And this is another game where I enjoy the black label more, since you can change your weapon on the fly. A good game, but like I said, I haven't put the time into it, so it's going in the C tier. ESPGaluda 2. If the original ESPGaluda was a beginner's game, then the sequel is an expert's game. I've always preferred the original, though. but this is more the same. But that's not a bad thing. But definitely harder. It looks great and it plays smooth as butter. But I'm thinking B tier for ESPGaluda 2. Pink Sweets. This is a sequel to Ibara, and one of my least played games on this list. Like Ibara, but with a cutesy element. It seems really hard, not quite for me, but there is probably something there for someone. So I don't know about Pink Sweets, but I don't think it deserves the F tier, but something needs to fill that spot. Mushihimesama Futari. Now this may be the funnest game on the list. It's much like the original but better. It does need the black label variant to really shine, and that's because it has more bullets and more slowdown, plus a rearranged shot type that's really overpowered. The original version is fine enough though, but this game ups the bullet canceling mechanic, so with the screen filling up with bullets until you kill the right enemy and all the bullets disappear, so you get those big juicy cancels. Stage 5 is really the best stage of any shmup. This game is really all that. It's so good. And this is going to go directly in the S tier at number 3. Muchi Muchi Pork. So this is another Yagawa game, and I haven't been able to spend much time on this one, but I at least find it interesting. When I first played it, I figured out how to score a little bit, and it seemed like a really fun mechanic. I've only been able to credit feed through this one, though, so I should play it some more. But I'm gonna have to put it in the D tier. Sorry to the Muchi Muchi Pork fans out there. Deathsmiles. I have played this one a bunch throughout the years, and it's always fun to revisit. I feel like this one is one of the bigger games in the West since it got a wide release here. The scoring isn't complicated, and it's easy to implement with just knowing a few timing tricks. Routing is a neat touch and makes the game very replayable. This is a good choice for beginners, and the clear is easily attainable. Also offers options for multiple difficulties. And that's not even to mention the story with the witches, graphics, and music, which are all top-notch. I have some nostalgia for this game, and it's great to play around Halloween. Deathsmiles is going to go in the A tier. Dodonpachi DFK. So this is an interesting Dodonpachi that's also quite accessible. The clear is easily attainable with the auto bombs on every bomb, but the game can throw a lot at you with that being said. Lots of bullet canceling hypers and laser on laser canceling. Stage 5 is brutal with its laser wheels designed to eat up remaining bombs and lives. It also has lots and lots of versions for fun. 2 different arranges and a black label that has its own arrange as well. And that's Black Label arrange, which is Ketsui, awesome combination of Ketsui and Dodonpachi. But it's super hard. This game also has a lot of cool secrets not found in any other games, with an alternate route. My only nitpick is the stage 5 laser wheels, and with all that bullet canceling, the game can feel a little more hands-off. But it's very fun, and it runs well on Steam, so I've played it quite a bit because of that. DFK is gonna have to go to the bottom of the A tier. Deathsmiles 2. Cave attempted a 3D game with the sequel to Deathsmiles, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Not like this. This is the rare black eye on Cave's record. So I'm gonna have to put this one dead last in F. Akai Katana. So this is probably my favorite of the horizontal shmups, and that's because it has the best scoring system. It may take a minute to comprehend, but when it clicks, it's a blast to play. And unlike Deathsmiles scoring, Akai Katana constantly engaged me as a player, and it requires thought and strategy throughout. The clear is acquirable with just about the perfect balance of determination, and it has a fair final boss. The game has 2 modes, Arcade or Zetsu, and a defaulted arrange mode called Shin/. Both these modes are quite different, but Shin Slash is my favorite to play. It's most comparable to something like ESPGaluda, with just how the scoring works and resource management, but instead of slowing down the bullets, you cancel the bullets. So I really engaged with that risk-reward system, and even after I got the clear, I kept playing for score, which isn't something I normally do too often. It's a very fun game, and that's why I think it's going to go towards the higher end of A rank, right ahead of Deathsmiles. Dodonpachi Side DOJ. We finally made it to Cave's final game and send off to the Dodonpachi series. Even though this game came out in 2012, I've only been able to play it the last couple of years. It is a very high-end game, but something feels a little off about it. I don't know, it just doesn't quite have the fluidness of some of Cave's other best games. Even though I have some cons about DFK, I think I like it more than this one. But again, I haven't played it as much as I would like. This could go anywhere in the B tier, but I think it would fit nicely right here. That concludes all of Cave's arcade shmups. Thanks for sticking around.